Admiral Kexthal stood at the panoramic viewport of Zaharian Imperial Station Theta 9, his hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the starfield. The viewport, a 30-meter curved panel of transparent metallo-ceramic composite, offered an unobstructed view of the Empire's outer frontier. Theta 9 had been his command for 15 years, the crowning achievement of a career spent in service to Emperor Zarhul and the Zaharian people. 3 centuries of uncontested military supremacy, he murmured to himself, watching as a patrol of interceptors banked gracefully around the station. Their hulls gleamed with the distinctive violet-black sheen of quantum-hardened battle armor, technology that had crushed a dozen species foolish enough to resist Imperial expansion. Behind him, the command center hummed with efficiency. 50 officers monitored their stations in disciplined silence, broken only by the occasional status report or acknowledgement. Commander Veltar approached, datapad in hand, her 4-fingered grip steady as she offered the day's security assessment. All sectors report optimal functionality. Admiral, she said. Her voice was clipped, precise, the voice of the Empire's finest tactical officer. Our sensor grid has been calibrated to detect cloaked vessels down to 1/10 standard visibility. The upgrades you authorized have proven most effective. Kexthal nodded with satisfaction. Excellent, Commander. The Emperor expects nothing less than perfection from Theta 9. We are the bulwark of civilization. Indeed, sir, Veltar replied. The quarterly fleet exercises begin tomorrow. General Marak sends his compliments and requests your presence at the initial briefing. Kexthal was about to respond when a priority alert chimed softly from the central monitoring station. Both officers turned sharply. Report, Kexthal commanded. The sensor officer's fingers danced across holographic controls. Anomalous reading, sir. Something just appeared at coordinates 3792-16, approximately 2 light minutes from our position. Appeared? Kexthal strode to the station. Clarify? Sir, there was nothing there. And then there was no warp signature, no quantum displacement, no subspace distortion. One moment our sensors showed empty space, the next a vessel of unknown configuration. Veltar leaned over the display. Impossible. Check for sensor malfunction. Already done, Commander. All systems functioning within optimal parameters. The officer's voice held a note of unease. The vessel is holding position. Its energy signature is unlike anything in our database. Size? Kexthal demanded. Approximately 1/5 of a standard cruiser. Minimal weapons profile detectable. Kexthal's eyes narrowed. Launch Interceptor Squadron Alpha. Full defensive posture, but no aggressive maneuvers without my direct order. And open a channel. As the command center mobilized, the scene shifted to a very different vessel hanging in the void. Captain Jake Morrison lounged in the pilot's chair of the Wanderer, his boots propped on an auxiliary console. The small ship's bridge was comfortable, rather than imposing. More living room than command center. Morrison sipped from a mug of coffee and glanced at his co-pilot. How's the drive looking, Park? He asked. Commander Lisa Park, chief engineer and second-in-command, studied a holographic display showing a complex geometric pattern. The Alcubierre-Chen equations are holding stable. We've got about 20 minutes before the drive's fully charged for the test jump. Morrison nodded. Nice, quiet spot for a test, don't you think? No traffic, plenty of empty space. Park frowned slightly. There's a civilization in this sector, according to the preliminary survey. Some sort of expansionist regime. Probably should have picked somewhere else. Too late now, Morrison shrugged. Besides, we're just passing through. They won't even... A small alert chimed, and both officers glanced at the communication panel. Looks like the locals noticed us, Morrison said with a half-smile. They're sending what I assume is a greeting party. Several small craft, military configuration. Should we move on? Park asked, her hand hovering over the drive controls. Morrison shook his head. Nah, let's be neighborly. Open standard communication channels, all frequencies. We'll say hello. Back aboard Theta 9, Admiral Kexthal watched as 12 interceptors approached the mysterious vessel. The tactical display showed their perfect formation, a testament to Imperial training and discipline. Vessel is broadcasting on multiple frequencies, sir, the communications officer reported. Audio and visual. On screen, Kexthal ordered. The main view screen flickered, and a human face appeared. The alien creature looked remarkably similar to Zaharians, though it lacked their distinctive cranial ridges and had only 2 eyes instead of 4. It smiled in what Kexthal assumed was a non-threatening gesture. Greetings, the creature said. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship Wanderer. We're just conducting a routine drive test in your neighborhood. Hope we're not causing any inconvenience. Kexthal stepped forward. This is Admiral Kexthal of the Zaharian Imperial Fleet. You have entered sovereign Imperial space without authorization. Identify your species and explain how you bypassed our sensor grid. The human's expression shifted to mild surprise. Oh, sorry about that. We're humans, from Earth. As for bypassing your sensors, we didn't really bypass anything. We just arrived. Standard space folding procedure. Veltar whispered to Kexthal. Space folding. They must be using some form of primitive warp technology. Kexthal nodded slightly. Your vessel will submit to inspection by our interceptors. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Morrison's easy smile didn't falter. Happy to let your ships take a look around from the outside. Admiral, we're on a tight schedule for our test, so aborting might be tricky. But your pilots are welcome to scan us. Just a friendly heads up that our hull might confuse your sensors a bit. Kexthal's mandibles tightened, a sign of growing irritation. The casual manner of this alien was borderline insolent. Did it not understand it was addressing the military might of the Zaharian Empire? Squadron Alpha, conduct external scans of the vessel, he ordered. Be advised, their technology may interfere with standard protocols. The interceptors surrounded the Wanderer, maintaining a respectful distance as they initiated their scan procedures. On the command deck of Theta 9, officers watched in tense silence. Suddenly, every alarm on the command deck blared simultaneously. Officers jumped to their feet as displays flickered and reset. What's happening? Kexthal demanded. Sir, the sensor officer's voice was strained. The alien vessel just scanned us. Not just the interceptors, the entire station. A single pulse of energy penetrated all shields and defensive measures. It was instantaneous. Veltar moved quickly to a secondary console. Confirmed. Whatever they used went through our shields as if they weren't there. But there's no damage to any systems. It appears to have been merely observational. On the view screen, Morrison's expression remained pleasant. Sorry about that. Automatic response to your scans. Just our ship saying hello back. No harm intended. Kexthal fought to maintain his composure. In 3 centuries, no species had penetrated Zaharian shields without a prolonged battle. This small vessel had done so with apparent ease. Your actions could be construed as hostile, Captain Morrison, Kexthal said, his voice low and dangerous. I suggest you... Captain, Park's voice came from off-screen. Drives charged. We're ready for the test jump. Morrison nodded and turned back to the view screen. Admiral, we're about to continue our test. Thanks for the warm welcome. If you're ever in Earth space, look us up. Wanderer, out. Before Kexthal could respond, the view screen went dark. On the tactical display, officers watched in stunned silence as the alien vessel simply vanished. Track them, Kexthal ordered. Deploy the quantum tracers. Sir, the sensor officer's voice was barely audible. There's nothing to track. No warp signature, no quantum wake, no subspace distortion. They're just gone. Admiral Kexthal stared at the empty tactical display, a cold feeling spreading through his core. In his 30 years of service, he had never encountered anything like this. The implications were troubling, deeply troubling. "Commander Veltar," he said quietly, "assemble the senior staff in Briefing Room 1 and classify all records of this encounter as Omega-level security." "Yes, Admiral," Veltar responded, already moving to execute his orders. As Kexthal made his way to the briefing room, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Zaharian Empire had just faced something it didn't understand. And in 3 centuries of expansion, that had never happened before. Aboard the Wanderer, now cruising peacefully in a different sector of space, Morrison and Park reviewed their telemetry. "So how'd the new drive perform?" Morrison asked, scrolling through data on his console. Park smiled. "Perfectly. The spatial compression was 14% more efficient than projected. We barely used any energy for the fold." "And what about our new friends back there? Get anything interesting?" Park pulled up a detailed analysis. Class C civilization. Early quantum manipulation technology, primarily focused on military applications. Expansionist culture. Hierarchical society. The computer classified them as pre-integration, observation-only status. Morrison nodded. "Seemed like a serious bunch. Did you see how worked up they got when we scanned them back?" "Their technology is impressive for their development stage," Park noted. "But they're at least 2 centuries from achieving true spatial manipulation. Their shields were based on energy deflection, not dimensional phasing." "Well," Morrison said, closing the display, "I'm sure they'll figure it out eventually. Set course for the rendezvous point. Let's get this data back to command." As the Wanderer prepared for another jump, neither human gave much thought to the profound effect their brief visit had just had on an entire empire. The briefing room. One of Theta 9 was designed to intimidate. Its black walls absorbed light rather than reflected it, creating an atmosphere of solemn gravity. The oval table at its center, carved from a single piece of rare Zaharian nightwood, seated 12. Today, only 5 places were occupied. Admiral Kexthal sat at the head, with Commander Veltar to his right. Chief Scientist Ral, whose specialized knowledge of xenotechnology made him invaluable, occupied the seat to Kexthal's left. 2 senior intelligence officers completed the group. The room's security systems ensured absolute privacy. Not even the Emperor himself could access their discussion without Kexthal's authorization. "Begin playback," Kexthal ordered. The center of the table shimmered as a holographic recreation of the encounter appeared. The officers watched in silence as the mysterious human vessel materialized, interacted with their forces, and vanished. When the recording ended, Kexthal turned to Chief Scientist Ral. "Your analysis?" Ral, whose elongated cranium housed one of the Empire's finest scientific minds, leaned forward. "The data is concerning. Admiral, the human vessel exhibited technology significantly beyond our current understanding." "Elaborate," Kexthal said. "Their method of arrival and departure defies conventional physics as we understand it." Ral manipulated controls on the table, bringing up energy readings from the encounter. "This signature suggests they didn't move through space in any traditional sense. Rather, they altered space itself." Commander Veltar frowned. "Clarify, scientist." Ral looked uncomfortable. "Imagine space as a piece of paper. We travel by moving across the paper. These humans appear to have folded the paper, bringing 2 distant points together momentarily, then unfolded it after crossing." "Is such a thing theoretically possible?" Kexthal asked. Our most advanced theorists have postulated such technology, Ral admitted. But the energy requirements would be astronomical. Yet their vessel showed minimal power signatures. What of their scan? Veltar inquired. How did it penetrate our shields? That, Ral said, is perhaps even more troubling. The pulse they emitted appears to have been a form of quantum entanglement scan. It didn't need to penetrate our shields because it was simultaneously inside and outside them. Our entire defensive concept is based on energy deflection. This operates on principles that render such defenses meaningless. Silence fell over the briefing room. The implications were clear to everyone present. One of the intelligence officers spoke. Admiral, we must report this to Imperial Command immediately. If these humans possess a fleet of such vessels— A moment, Kexthal interrupted. Let us be precise about what we know. This was a single vessel, apparently engaged in testing new technology. Its crew's demeanor suggested no hostile intent. They even classified us as— what was their phrase? Commander. Veltar consulted her notes. A Class C civilization, Admiral. Kexthal's four eyes narrowed. They categorized us like specimens. There's something else, Admiral, Ral said quietly. The scan they performed, it wasn't just observational. It was comprehensive. In those few seconds, they likely acquired complete schematics of our station, weapon systems, shield generators, everything. And they obtained this information with apparent ease, Kexthal concluded, as if it were trivial. The room fell silent again as the officers contemplated the implications. The Zaharian Empire had built its dominance on technological superiority. If that advantage had been not just neutralized, but rendered obsolete— Compile all data into an encrypted report, Kexthal finally ordered. I will present it personally to the Emperor at tomorrow's council. Until then, this matter remains classified at the highest level. As the officers filed out, Kexthal remained seated, staring at the space where the holographic recreation of the human ship had been. For the first time in his distinguished career, he felt something unfamiliar stirring in his consciousness. Fear. The Earth Deep Space Command Center, nestled beneath the surface of Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon, buzzed with the controlled energy of routine operations. In Testing Lab 7, Captain Jake Morrison and Commander Lisa Park stood before a panel of senior officers, presenting their findings from the Wanderer's latest test run. In summary, Morrison concluded, the Mark IV spatial compression drive performed beyond expectations. Energy consumption was 14% below projected levels, and spatial stability maintained at 99.8% throughout the test. Commander Park advanced the holographic display to show the final set of metrics. The only notable event was a brief encounter with a Class C civilization in Sector 89. Standard protocols were followed, and we've submitted the cultural observation data to the Xenosociology Division. Admiral Hernandez, head of the testing division, nodded approvingly. Excellent work, both of you. Any unusual reactions from the locals? Morrison shrugged. They seemed a bit surprised by our arrival method. Their military escorted us, standard procedure for their type. Nothing remarkable. Their scan technology was surprisingly thorough for their development stage, Park added. They've clearly focused their resources on defensive capabilities. Noted, Hernandez said. We'll flag that sector for cultural observation teams. The standard non-interference protocols apply. Of course. The meeting concluded with routine assignments for the next phase of testing. As Morrison and Park left the briefing room, they were already discussing modifications for the next test flight. The encounter with the Zaharian Empire, an event that was, at that very moment, sending shockwaves through an interstellar civilization, rated barely a footnote in their report. The Imperial Palace on Zaharia Prime was an architectural wonder that sprawled across 10 square kilometers, Its spires and domes, constructed from rare metals and living crystal, were designed to inspire awe in subjects and visitors alike. At its heart lay the High Council Chamber, where Emperor Zarhul and his most trusted advisors determined the fate of 1,000 worlds. Today, the chamber was sealed to all but 7 individuals. Emperor Zarhul, resplendent in ceremonial armor that accentuated his impressive stature, occupied the central throne. Admiral Kexthol and Commander Veltar stood before him, having just completed their report on the human encounter. Flanking the Emperor were General Morak, head of the Imperial Fleet, Grand Scientist Tobir, chief of all research divisions, and 2 senior counselors whose political acumen had helped shape Imperial policy for decades. The holographic recreation of the Wanderer rotated slowly above the central dais. "You mean to tell me," Emperor Zarhul said, his voice dangerously quiet, "that this diminutive vessel bypassed our most advanced detection systems, neutralized our shields with a casual scan, and disappeared in a manner we cannot explain or track?" "That is correct, Your Eminence," Kexthol confirmed, maintaining perfect military posture. "Impossible!" General Morak slammed a fist on the arm of his chair. "Our technologies have been refined through conquest of dozens of species. Nothing can penetrate our defenses so easily. Yet something did, General," Kexthol replied evenly. "The evidence is incontrovertible." Grand Scientist Tobir leaned forward, his aged face contemplative. "If these readings are accurate, and I have no reason to doubt Admiral Kexthol's thoroughness, then we have encountered a civilization whose scientific advancement exceeds our own by a significant margin." "One vessel does not constitute a civilization," Morak countered. "It could have been an anomaly, a lucky experimental prototype. The humans' behavior suggests otherwise." Commander Veltar interjected. "They treated the technology as routine. Their classification of us as a Class C civilization implies a systematic categorization of encountered species. This suggests established protocols and extensive experience." Emperor Zarhul raised a hand, silencing further debate. "What are the strategic implications, Admiral Kexthol?" Kexthol took a breath before answering. This was the question he had dreaded. "Your Eminence, if the humans possess a fleet of vessels with similar capabilities, our current defensive and offensive strategies would be ineffective." "Ineffective?" Morak scoffed. "Our fleet numbers in the tens of thousands." "Grand Scientist," Zarhul turned to Tobir, "your assessment?" Tobir's fingers manipulated a personal console. "I've analyzed the scan data from the encounter. Based on the energy signatures and theoretical principles involved, I believe we are facing a civilization that has mastered manipulations of space-time fabric itself. Our weapons and shields operate within space-time. Theirs appear to operate upon space-time." "A meaningful distinction?" Zarhul asked. "Profoundly so, Your Eminence. It is the difference between swimming in a river and redirecting its flow." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For 3 centuries, the Zaharian Empire had expanded through a combination of diplomatic pressure and, when necessary, overwhelming military force. Their technological edge had always been decisive. The idea that they might have encountered a power that rendered that edge meaningless was almost inconceivable. "I propose a simulation," Kexthol said, breaking the silence. "Using the data we've gathered, our tactical computers can model a hypothetical confrontation between our forces and a fleet equipped with this human technology." Emperor Zarhul considered this for a moment, then nodded. "Proceed, Admiral." Kexthol approached the central dais and input a series of commands. The holographic display shifted, showing a massive Zaharian battle fleet, 10,000 ships arranged in the Empire's standard attack formation. Opposite them appeared a single vessel, modeled after the Wanderer. The simulation will pit our entire central fleet against a single human vessel with the capabilities we observed. Kexthal explained, the tactical computer has been programmed with all known parameters. This is absurd, General Morak muttered. 10,000 ships against one? Begin simulation, Emperor Zarhul commanded, ignoring the general's complaint. The holographic fleets sprang into motion. The Zaharian armada advanced in perfect formation. Weapon systems charging. The simulated human vessel remained stationary. When the Zaharian fleet came within optimal firing range, a barrage of energy weapons and quantum torpedoes launched toward the lone ship. At the same instant, a faint pulse emanated from the human vessel. The pulse passed through the Zaharian fleet. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, ship by ship, the entire holographic armada began to distort and collapse, as if being crushed by an invisible hand. In less than 3 seconds, all 10,000 vessels had been reduced to compressed matter no larger than pebbles. Stunned silence filled the council chamber. "This is fantasy!" Morak finally exploded. "No weapon could—" "It's not a weapon in the conventional sense," Grand Scientist Tobir interrupted, his voice quavering slightly. "If I'm interpreting the data correctly, they simply compressed the space occupied by our fleet. The ships imploded when the space containing them contracted." "Can such a thing be defended against?" Emperor Zarhul asked quietly. Tobir hesitated. "Not with our current understanding of physics, Your Eminence. We would need to develop technologies operating on the same principles." "How long would that take?" The aged scientist calculated mentally. With all imperial resources diverted to the effort, perhaps 2 centuries, perhaps more. Another silence fell, heavier than before. "There is another possibility," Commander Veltar said carefully. "The humans' behavior during the encounter was not hostile. They showed no aggression, even when confronted by our interceptors. They simply conducted their test and departed." "Your point, Commander," Zarhul asked. "Perhaps they are not conquerors. Their cultural development may have taken a different path than our own. If so, diplomatic engagement might be preferable to alternatives." General Morak snorted. "Weakness! You suggest we should prostrate ourselves before these humans?" "I suggest," Veltar replied coolly, "that we adapt to a changed reality, something the military has always excelled at. General—" Before Morak could retort, Emperor Zarhul raised his hand again. "Enough. This matter requires further consideration. Admiral Kexthal, you will establish a special division dedicated to gathering any and all information about these humans. Commander Veltar will oversee the effort. General Morak, review all fleet deployments. I want our forces consolidated in defensive positions around core worlds." The Emperor rose, his expression grim. "This council is adjourned until further data is available." As the councillors filed out, Kexthal found himself walking alongside Grand Scientist Tobir. "Is it truly as bad as the simulation suggests?" Kexthal asked quietly. Tobir's aged eyes met his. "Admiral, I've served the Empire for 7 decades. In that time, I've seen technologies come and go, enemies rise and fall. But this—" He glanced back at the holographic display, still showing the aftermath of the simulated battle. "This is different. We've built our civilization on the principle that strength conquers all. We may need to reconsider that principle." "What would you suggest instead?" Kexthal asked. Tobir smiled sadly. "Perhaps it's time we learned to conquer our own ignorance, rather than other species." The words stayed with Kexthal long after the scientist had departed. In the weeks that followed, the Zaharian Empire mobilized its vast intelligence network for a single purpose: learning everything possible about the humans. Spies were dispatched, communications intercepted, trading vessels questioned, Commander Veltar established her headquarters in a secure wing of Theta 9, where teams of analysts worked around the clock to piece together fragments of information into a coherent picture. 30 days after the initial encounter, Veltar presented her preliminary findings to Admiral Kexthal in his private office. "Our efforts have yielded surprising results. Admiral," she began, "humans are more widespread than we initially assumed. We've identified at least 27 planets with human settlements, spanning 3 galactic sectors." Kexthal absorbed this information with growing concern. "Military installations." "That's just it, sir," Veltar replied. "We've found nothing that corresponds to our definition of military infrastructure. No fleet bases, no weapons platforms, no defensive arrays. Their settlements appear to be primarily scientific, agricultural, or recreational in nature." "Impossible," Kexthal frowned. "No species expands to multiple worlds without military protection." "Nevertheless, that appears to be the case." Veltar activated a holographic display showing images captured by Zaharian operatives. "We've observed human survey teams mapping the accretion disks of black holes. Others are establishing what appear to be research stations inside gas giants. Still others are transforming asteroids into self-sustaining habitats." "For what purpose?" "As far as we can determine, curiosity." Veltar sounded almost bewildered. "They seem to be exploring for the sake of exploration itself." Kexthal stared at the images, trying to reconcile this information with imperial doctrines that had guided Zaharian expansion for centuries. "What of their weapons technology? The spatial compression capabilities we observed?" "That's the most disturbing aspect, sir." Veltar brought up new images. "One of our trading vessels encountered humans in the Proxima sector. They established communication and engaged in a basic exchange of goods." "What goods?" "The humans offered tools capable of molecular restructuring, technology that could revolutionize our manufacturing processes. In exchange, they requested fruit." "Fruit?" Kexthal repeated incredulously. "Specifically, a rare variety of Zaharian starberries. They called them fascinating and said they were collecting biological samples from across the galaxy." Kexthal sat back, trying to process this information. "They traded advanced technology. For berries?" "Yes, Admiral. Our analysis suggests the molecular restructuring tools represent mid-level technology by their standards. They treated the exchange as if both items were of roughly equal value. The implications were staggering. If molecular restructuring technology was considered mid-level by human standards, what did that suggest about their true capabilities?" "There's more," Veltar continued. "Chief Scientist Ral has analyzed the trading vessel's sensor logs. The human ship they encountered exhibited energy signatures consistent with controlled manipulation of quantum foam, the very fabric of space-time." "Is such a thing even possible?" "According to our science, no. But they appear to have mastered it. Ral believes they're using microscopic black holes as power sources, though how they prevent such objects from consuming their vessels is beyond our understanding." Kexthal was silent for a long moment. Throughout his career, he had faced numerous challenges: rebellious subject worlds, rival expansionist powers, even natural disasters that threatened imperial stability. But this situation defied all his training and experience. How does one develop strategy against a power whose fundamental capabilities cannot be understood, let alone countered? "Your assessment, Commander," he finally asked. Veltar chose her words carefully. "Sir, I believe we are facing a civilization so advanced that our most sophisticated technologies appear primitive by comparison. Their casual attitude toward us suggests they don't view us as a threat, or perhaps even as equals. We may need to reconsider our entire approach to interspecies relations." Kexthal stood and moved to the viewport, gazing out at the stars that had once seemed the Empire's birthright to claim. Now, those same stars felt suddenly vast and unknown. "Compile your findings into a comprehensive report," he ordered. "I will present it personally to the Emperor." "Yes, Admiral." Veltar hesitated, then added, "Sir, if I may, this situation may represent an opportunity, as well as a challenge. If we could establish meaningful contact with the humans, perhaps we could learn from them." Kexthal turned, studying his second-in-command. In the past, such a suggestion might have seemed treasonous, implying the Empire had anything to learn from lesser species. Now, it seemed the only rational course. "Include that recommendation in your report, Commander," he said quietly. "I believe the Emperor may be receptive to new approaches." After Veltar departed, Kexthal remained at the viewport, watching as a patrol of interceptors performed their routine security sweep. He had spent his life believing in the Empire's destiny to rule the stars. Now, he wondered if they were merely children playing at conquest, unaware of the true powers that dwelt among those same stars. The thought should have been terrifying. Instead, he felt something unexpected stirring within him. Curiosity. The Imperial Palace was unusually quiet. Following Admiral Kexthal's presentation of Commander Veltar's findings, Emperor Zarhul had withdrawn to his private meditation chamber, admitting not even his most trusted advisors. For 3 days, the Empire's absolute ruler contemplated the implications of humanity's apparent technological supremacy. On the 4th day, he summoned the High Council to an emergency session. The councilors arrived to find the traditional seating arrangement altered. Instead of the Emperor's throne dominating the chamber, a circular table had been installed. Emperor Zarhul, though still distinguished by his ceremonial armor, sat as one among equals, an unprecedented change in imperial protocol. "My loyal servants," Zarhul began, his voice somber. "For 3 centuries, the Zaharian Empire has expanded across the stars, bringing order and civilization to countless worlds. Our military might has been unquestioned, our technological superiority assured." He activated a holographic display showing the Wanderer, alongside other human vessels, subsequently identified by Imperial intelligence. "That era has ended," he stated bluntly. "We have encountered a species whose capabilities so far exceed our own that any conflict would result not in defeat, but in annihilation. The reports you have all now read make this conclusion inescapable." General Morak, predictably, objected. "Your Eminence, we cannot accept such a conclusion based on limited information. Our fleet would be destroyed in seconds," Zarhul interrupted. "The simulations have been run dozens of times with varying parameters. The outcome is always the same." "Then what would you have us do?" Morak demanded. "Surrender our sovereignty? Become vassals to these humans?" "No," Zarhul replied calmly. "I would have us learn." The Emperor manipulated the holographic controls, bringing up images of human scientific outposts and research vessels. "For 3 centuries, we have devoted our greatest resources to military expansion. We have measured progress in territories conquered, species subjugated, resources acquired. The humans appear to measure progress differently in knowledge gained, mysteries solved, understanding achieved." Grand Scientist Tobir nodded slowly. "Their technological advancement stems from this focus on fundamental research rather than applied military technology. They understand the universe in ways we have not even begun to explore." "Precisely," Zarhul agreed. "And so, I propose a radical change in imperial policy, effective immediately. I am halting all military expansion. Our fleet will assume a purely defensive posture. The resources previously allocated to conquest will be redirected towards scientific research and education." A stunned silence fell over the council chamber. "Furthermore," Zarhul continued. I am ordering the establishment of the Imperial Academy of Sciences, to be built where the Military Command Center now stands. General Morak, you and your senior staff will be among its first students. Morak's expression shifted from shock to outrage. Students, we are warriors, not... You are servants of the Empire. Zarhul cut him off sharply. And the Empire now requires minds, not weapons. You may resign your commission if you find these new duties distasteful. The general fell silent, though his posture remained rigid with barely contained fury. Admiral Kexthal. The Emperor turned to the naval commander. You will oversee the transformation of our military shipyards into research facilities. Commander Veltar will coordinate with our intelligence services to gather all available information about human scientific methods and principles. As you command, Your Eminence. Kexthal acknowledged, his expression revealing nothing of his inner thoughts. Finally, Zarhul addressed the full council. I am initiating diplomatic overtures to neighboring stellar powers, including those we have previously regarded as rivals or subjects. I propose the formation of a galactic council for scientific advancement, with membership open to all species willing to contribute to collective knowledge. This announcement provoked visible shock among the councilors. The notion of treating former enemies as equals was unprecedented in imperial history. Your Eminence. One of the political advisors ventured cautiously. Such a policy represents a fundamental reversal of 3 centuries of imperial doctrine. There will be resistance. No doubt. Zarhul agreed. Change is rarely embraced immediately. But consider the alternative. We can adapt and perhaps one day stand as equals with species like the humans. Or we can cling to our outdated notions of superiority and be left behind. A footnote in galactic history. He rose from his seat, his imposing figure commanding attention. I did not lead our people to greatness by ignoring reality. The reality now is that the universe is larger and more wondrous than we have understood. It is time we expanded our minds rather than our borders. The council session continued for hours as the details of this new direction were debated and refined. Throughout the discussions, Admiral Kexthal remained mostly silent, observing the historic shift in imperial policy with mixed emotions. His entire career had been built on the old paradigm of military expansion. Now, that paradigm was being dismantled before his eyes. Yet, as he listened to the increasingly enthusiastic exchange of ideas, even General Morak eventually contributing suggestions for research priorities, he felt that same unexpected emotion stirring again. Curiosity, and with it, perhaps, a glimmer of hope. 2 years passed. The Zaharian Empire, once known primarily for its military might, underwent a transformation unprecedented in its history. The great shipyards that had once produced dreadnoughts and battle cruisers now constructed research vessels and scientific platforms. The Imperial Academy of Sciences, erected on the former site of military command, became the new heart of Zaharian civilization. Admiral Kexthal, his role evolved from military commander to director of exploration, stood in the observatory of the Academy's central tower. Through the transparent dome, he watched as students from a dozen formerly subjugated species worked alongside Zaharian scientists, studying star charts and quantum equations. Quite a change, isn't it, Admiral? Commander Veltar, now Dr. Veltar, following her groundbreaking work on theoretical space-time mechanics, joined him at the viewport. Indeed, Kexthal agreed. I hardly recognize the empire I served for so many years. Do you regret the transformation? Kexthal considered the question carefully. I miss the certainty of the old days, he admitted. Military hierarchy provided clear purpose and direction. This new path is messier, more chaotic, but also more invigorating, Veltar suggested. I've never seen such creativity and intellectual energy among our people. True enough. Kexthal gestured toward a group of young Zephyrians, a species that, under the old regime, would have been confined to labor colonies. Now, they sat as equals with Zaharian scientists, their natural aptitude for multidimensional mathematics making them valued collaborators. They've made remarkable progress on spatial folding theory. Remarkable indeed, Veltar agreed. Their latest simulations suggest we might achieve primitive spacetime manipulation within 50 years, rather than the 2 centuries originally estimated. And the Galactic Council? Growing beyond all expectations. 27 species have joined so far, including 4 that were previously hostile to Imperial expansion. The exchange of knowledge has accelerated research across a dozen fields. Kexthal nodded, satisfaction evident in his posture. And the humans? Veltar's expression turned rueful. Still seemingly unaware of our existence, at least as anything other than a Class C civilization of moderate interest. Our observation posts have documented dozens of human vessels traversing Imperial space, but they show no interest in formal contact. Perhaps that's for the best, for now, Kexthal mused. We still have much to learn before we could engage with them as anything approaching equals. A soft chime interrupted their conversation. Veltar checked her communication device. The Emperor requests your presence at the Council chambers. The Centaurian delegation has arrived with new astronomical data. Very well. Kexthal took a last look at the students below, before turning toward the exit. You know, Doctor, there are days when I wonder what would have happened if that human ship had never appeared at Theta 9. We would still be conquering worlds and subjugating species, Veltar replied simply. And entirely unaware of how small we truly were in the cosmic scheme. A humbling thought, but a necessary one, I think. As they made their way to the council chambers, Kexthal reflected on the irony of the situation. The Zaharian Empire, once the dominant military power in its corner of the galaxy, had been utterly defeated without a single shot being fired. The mere existence of human technology had been enough to render 3 centuries of imperial doctrine obsolete overnight. Yet from that defeat had come transformation. The former warrior culture now directed its discipline and determination toward understanding the universe, rather than conquering it. Young Zaharians who would once have become soldiers now trained as scientists, engineers, and philosophers. And somewhere out there, humans continued their casual exploration of the cosmos, building stars as weekend projects and treating black holes as interesting research subjects, entirely unaware that they had become the unwitting teachers of an empire that had once thought itself supreme. The Galactic Council Chamber, originally designed to accommodate the representatives of 20 species, had been expanded twice in the past year. Now, delegates from over 30 stellar civilizations gathered in the amphitheater-like space, their diverse physiologies catered to by adaptive seating and environmental controls. Emperor Zarhul, who had abandoned the traditional imperial regalia in favor of the simple blue robes of the Academy, addressed the assembled representatives. Honored delegates, today marks the 2nd anniversary of our collective endeavor. In that time, we have shared knowledge that has advanced all our civilizations. The Trilarians have taught us new approaches to quantum entanglement. The Centaurians have shared their unparalleled astronomical data. The Zephyrians have revolutionized our understanding of multidimensional mathematics. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. And yet, Zarhul continued, we have barely begun to approach the level of understanding exhibited by the humans, whose casual demonstration of space-time manipulation inspired this council's formation. A holographic display activated, showing the latest observations of human activities. A research team was constructing what appeared to be an artificial star, manipulating stellar matter with the casual confidence of children building a sandcastle. 2 years ago, I would have viewed such capabilities with fear, Zarhul admitted. Today, I view them with aspiration. They represent not a threat to be countered, but a goal to be achieved. Perhaps not in our lifetime, but in our descendants. Admiral Kexthal, seated with the Zaharian delegation, found himself nodding in agreement. His initial fear of human technology had long since transformed into respect and, increasingly, admiration. The species that could have destroyed the Zaharian Empire instead had inadvertently inspired its greatest advancement. To that end, Zarhul continued, I propose the establishment of the first interspecies university, open to students from all council member worlds. Together, we will raise a generation that views cooperation and knowledge-sharing not as revolutionary concepts, but as the natural order. The proposal was met with enthusiastic approval. As the delegates discussed implementation details, Dr. Veltar leaned toward Kexthal. It seems our defeat has led to greater achievements than our conquests ever did, she observed quietly. A paradox worthy of study in itself. Kexthal agreed with what might have been a smile, an expression once rare among Zaharian military officers, now increasingly common. The council session continued late into the night, with representatives debating everything from curriculum design to faculty selection. When it finally adjourned, Kexthal found himself walking alongside Zarhul in the gardens surrounding the council building. You've been unusually quiet today, Admiral, the Emperor noted. I was reflecting on how far we've come, Kexthal replied, and how much further we have to go. Indeed. Our best estimates suggest we're still centuries behind human technological development. Do you ever wonder if they'll notice us? Kexthal asked. Not just as a classification, but as peers. Zarhul considered the question thoughtfully. Perhaps someday, when we've advanced enough to engage with them meaningfully, when we have something to offer beyond our curiosity. And if that day never comes, then we will still have transformed our civilization for the better. Zarhul replied simply. The journey matters as much as the destination, Admiral. Kexthal nodded, finding wisdom in the Emperor's words. The Zaharian Empire had once measured its worth in planets conquered and species subjugated. Now, it measured progress in knowledge gained and shared. By the old metrics, they had suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of humanity. By the new metrics, that defeat had been their greatest victory. As if sensing his thoughts, Zarhul added, You know, there's a certain freedom in recognizing one's limitations. We spent centuries believing we were the pinnacle of evolution, destined to rule the stars. Now we know we're simply one species among many, with much to learn. There's humility in that realization, but also possibility. Possibility, Kexthal repeated. Yes, I believe you're right. Your Eminence. For the first time in my life, I feel the future is not predetermined by imperial doctrine, but open to discovery. Above them, the night sky glittered with stars, the same stars that had once seemed the Empire's birthright to conquer. Now, they represented mysteries to solve, wonders to explore, and perhaps, someday, neighbors to greet as equals. Elsewhere in the galaxy, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Earth's newest research station. Through the transparent walls, he watched as technicians made final adjustments to an experimental stellar nursery, a project designed to accelerate the natural formation of stars for study. Impressive, isn't it? Commander Park joined him at the viewport. 10 years ago, we could only observe stellar formation. Now we're creating stars to order. Progress marches on, Morrison agreed. Any word from the exploratory teams in the Class C sectors? Several interesting reports, Park replied. That expansionist regime we encountered during our drive test a couple of years back. They've undergone some kind of societal transformation. Shifted from military expansion to scientific research almost overnight. Really? That's unusual for their development stage. Very. The anthropologists are fascinated. They're suggesting it might be the fastest cultural evolution ever documented in a pre-contact civilization. Morrison considered this with mild interest. Any theories on what triggered the change? Park shrugged. Something must have given them a glimpse of what lies beyond their current understanding. The lead anthropologist thinks they might be candidates for contact within a century or two, rather than the 5 centuries originally projected. Well, good for them, Morrison said, his attention already drifting back to the stellar nursery. Everyone has to start somewhere. As the two officers discussed technical details of the star formation project, neither gave further thought to the distant civilization whose entire worldview had been transformed by their brief, casual visit. To them, the Zaharian Empire was simply one of dozens of developing cultures under distant observation, interesting, but hardly remarkable in the grand scheme of cosmic evolution. And yet, in their unwitting role as catalysts, they had done more to advance that civilization than centuries of conquest and expansion ever could. A single ship, appearing and vanishing, had accomplished what no fleet or army could have achieved. It had opened minds to the vast possibilities that lay beyond the limited horizon of military supremacy. In the lecture hall of the newly established Interspecies University, Admiral Kexthal, now Professor Kexthal, concluded his inaugural address to the first class of students. The universe, he told the assembled youngsters from 30 different worlds, is not a territory to be conquered, but a mystery to be explored. Your task is not to claim it, but to understand it, not to impose your will upon it, but to harmonize with its fundamental nature. He gestured toward the window, where the star that humans casually called Sol could be seen as a distant point of light. Somewhere out there, a civilization exists that has already traveled the path we are just beginning. They fold space as we fold paper. They build stars as we build models. They study black holes as we study pond ecosystems. Their achievement is not that they have conquered the universe, but that they have begun to understand it. The students, Zaharian, Centaurian, Zapiria, and many others, watched with rapt attention as the former military commander shared a vision of possibilities they had never been taught to imagine. Perhaps someday, Kexthal continued, we will stand as equals with such beings. Perhaps someday, we will join them in their exploration of the cosmos. Until then, we have much to learn. And the greatest lesson is this: true power lies not in domination, but in understanding. As the lecture concluded and the students filed out, Kexthal remained at the podium, contemplating the journey that had brought him to this moment. From defender of empire to teacher of wisdom, from conqueror to explorer, a transformation as profound as that of the civilization he served. Outside the university, a new generation was rising, one that would never know the limitations of imperial doctrine or the narrow confines of military ambition. They would grow up in a society that valued knowledge above conquest, cooperation above domination, understanding above control. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, human vessels continued their journeys of exploration, unaware of the profound change they had catalyzed with a single, casual demonstration of their everyday technology. The unknown ship that had appeared and vanished had indeed ensured the Empire never stood a chance, not as a military power, but as something far greater, a community of learners in a universe of wonders. The greatest conquest, Kexthal now understood, was not of space, but of ignorance. The greatest victory was not subjugation, but illumination. And the greatest power was not the ability to destroy, but the capacity to understand. As night fell on the new Zaharian Empire, stars glittered in the sky, no longer targets for conquest, but beacons of possibility. And in their light, a civilization once bent on domination found something far more precious: the humility to learn and the wisdom to grow.